All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for staying. This feels like a little bit more like home to me now, here. Thank you so much for staying, everyone. I have only 20 minutes, probably maybe 25 or so, and I have a couple of things to share, and they are frustrating. Anybody likes frustrating experiences on the web? Anybody likes carousels? Come on, give me something. Anybody likes carousels? Not many people. Anybody likes infinite scroll? 6, 7 of you, maybe. Anybody likes what else? Buttons, disabled buttons. Anybody? What a great experience that is. Well, I want to share a couple of things and what would work and what would not work. But before that, I need to start with a little journey. So this was my journey. This is when everything started for me, right? Not on the web, before the web. Anybody knows what this is? A few people, not that many, I have to say. 7 people. So this was the game, this is the game Prince of Persia, and this was my start of the digital world, right? Where I would spend, again, forward. No, that one. This, it's okay. It's okay. So, this is, have to be, tell myself. No, it doesn't seem to be, hold on. Okay, let's pretend that, no, it just doesn't want. Okay, that's okay. So this was me playing through this Prince of Persia, and I spent a lot of time doing that, right? And then eventually, in 1998, I discovered this site. Anybody recognize this website? Do you know that this website today is 24 years old? That website might be older than many of you sitting in this room today. And it celebrated its birthday on February 17th, right? So that's a date that I always celebrate as well, right? So this was the time in 1998 where I got into the internet, and I really loved it so much, I could not stop trying to figure out a way to do this, right? This was an extremely exciting time for me. Now, obviously, we changed a lot over time, and over time we got into this world. This was a big deal in 2009. Anybody maybe remembers this website? So 2009, there was a lot of experimentation. Even Ferrero is a Spanish artist, was doing a lot of kind of mixed, sometimes you get mixed paintings, collages, this kind of things. He was doing it on the web. And then eventually we got to the point where we are right now, where we got the Teatr Lalka, for example, which is a wonderful Polish theater, puppet theater website. It's beautiful. It's incredible. I wish every single website was more or less like that. That's just absolutely amazing. But my world looks much more like this. Is anybody excited about this? 1.5, I think 2.5 people now. And sometimes I'm wondering, questioning my life choices. Take a cup of coffee or tea, sit down and enjoy your wonderful change password requirements, because this is what we do, right? And sometimes it gets really creative. You have to play the game. I feel like sometimes I'm one of those movies where somebody's playing me. Try to find the right password kind of game, right? And it keeps going and going. This is the weirdest thing I've seen in my life. You adding a newsletter sign up in your shopping cart with which you can then check out, luckily for free. That's great. That's so weird, right? And then you get this. Anybody has any, I would say, strong emotions about this? Give me something. Give me your energy, all of it. Not a lot of energy I can see here. That's like, those things. And luckily we don't get them, right? We don't get them anymore because they are disguised in a slightly different shape, in a slightly different, plenary out there, because they look today more like this. Is it just me? But sometimes I question myself, this pixel. Anybody? Like this pixel. Is it still technically a crosswalk or not? These are all the questions that I keep asking myself all the time. Such a painful experience. And we need to really be very careful about how we speak about design in general, right? We don't want to provide frustrating experiences. And we can talk about things being very boring things, being well-designed, badly designed. But if I ask you if you find that this design is incredible or not, I assume that most of you would say that's not great design. But we need to be very, very careful about how we kind of talk about design in general. We need to speak about design as something that can be measured, right? Which is something that we discussed here. Here's an example of frustration that comes into place, and I need to always argue why it's frustrating. Now, this is an input for my date of birth. Now, normally, it would be nice if I could, I don't know, just type it in, because I don't know about you, but it's not like I have to look up my birthday. Right? Don't have to ask myself, was it now Friday? Or was it Saturday? I don't remember the date. I need to look it up. I need to look it up in a calendar. No, this is not a real use case. And here I'm being forced to go for these decades, to go left and right and up and down just to find my actual birth year. Right? That's just not necessary. Typing in is going to be much, much faster. It's probably going to avoid a lot of confusion as well. And then comes this. I will never forget this. Time input, date input. Why don't we bring them together, right? Everything is going to be better this way, like this. And you could always argue, well, but then you tap into the metaphor about how people perceive the clock or the time, right? You know, 2 input boxes can be perfectly fine. You don't need to create this metaphor, making people kind of work hard to be very precise in their input. They're just totally unnecessary, right? And then sometimes you also get this. I'm going to let it be for a moment, and you tell me how this works. I mean, we're designers, right? We can do whatever we want, so let's do just that. So this is the date constructor, 1956, September 27, right? Makes only perfect sense, right? So anybody think that this is a great design? 2 people? Anybody think that this is the opposite of the previous statement? Okay, a lot more. Well, I can tell you with a lot of certainty and a lot of confidence that this is an incredible design. It's a great design. It's an amazing design. It's impeccable design. It's the best design ever created for a very specific use case. Very, very specific use case. This was designed for the public library in the US, where people using this kind of interface have to index books all the time. The way of indexing books with this kind of metaphor, with this kind of design, right, on the mobile phone, is significantly faster than if we had, let's say, 2 or 3 or 4 input fields, right? So the time increase for them, or decrease actually, in order to kind of complete those tasks, but the improvement was around 25%. That's actually remarkable. Of course it's great design for them, but not for everybody else, right? So this brings me to this idea that we started working on, just as a precursor of what I'm going to cover in a moment. These are kind of my menu of all the different attributes that we need to keep in mind when we're talking about design. Design, again, is not art that's supposed to be in a museum. Design is supposed to solve problems, to solve tasks. But then we need to be able to measure how well a particular design solves a particular problem, and if another design solves that problem better or faster. And there are 2 most important metrics we always look at. Time to complete, which means just how much time people need to complete a task. And the other one would be the accuracy of data, just how accurate is that input, how correct is that input, right? For example, for forms, it's going to be very important. But also other things, how often errors occur. And if they do occur, how quickly people recover from those errors. This is going to be the quality of error messages, for example, right? That's a lot of stuff in here, and of course you'll get the slides anyway. But just to give you an idea that we need to be really sensitive and really careful about how we're talking about design, right? Okay, so with this in mind, let's talk about 2 of them. One is carousels, right? Beautiful, beautiful carousels, right? I don't get why we hate them so much. What did they do to you to hate them so much? I just don't get it. Now, this is what a carousel usually would look like, right? You have an arrow, you have another arrow, and you have dots in between, right? And as you click through the dots, the slides or slices of the carousel change, right? Well, if we look at some data, right, we'll find out that this is not necessarily the best way of doing that. But if you start going to Turkey, hold on, just pause for a moment. Anybody from Turkey here? No? Okay. So I have a strange hobby that I highly encourage you to take over as well. Every other, Thursday, Friday, I would pick a random topic, combine it with a random country, and search for things like that in Google, right? For example, one day, it was an incredible Friday, you would say, friends, UX people, let's gather around and go for insurance companies in Turkey. That's fun. Or in my case, it was insurance, not insurance, news websites in Turkey. And what you will find in Turkey is that they would never use dots and carousels. Never. Instead, there will be numbers, right? A lot of those numbers. So if you start looking around, let me just play it back, right? You'll find these numbers, vertical numbers, horizontal numbers. And if you keep going, please scroll down eventually, right? Have a lot of those numbers all over the place. And when you start talking to people from Turkey, why would you use numbers? Well, because you can actually give people some context. You can drive somebody to slice number 16, right? I'm not sure if this is necessarily what we need to do, but that's kind of the idea there, right? And this is, this is an exhibit, the Carousel Museum exhibit, right? What option would you prefer? This content slider, the one with the thumbnails, the vertical exhibit, and the horizontal exhibit. 4 carousels for the price of 1. Incredible, right? Okay, so that's not helpful for us, though. Now, let's take a look closely at this mock-up for a moment, this design, right? And specifically, this is a carousel. Anybody feels like there is a carousel in the house? Okay, there is a carousel in here, right? Now, you find this slice of the carousel. It's a very long, big image, right? And then you have this, which is a little vertical slider here, and you have a dot, the black dot in the middle, and you also have, what you cannot see is numbers, 1 and 6 over here. Okay, so if you now have this incredible job of moving from the first slide of the carousel to the second, how would you do that? I mean, usually we tap or click or scroll or scream at the interface, right? This is how we usually operate it. So who would say, click on the dot, on that black circle? Not many people. Who would say, try to drag it across the slider? Okay, a lot of people. Who would click on the numbers, 1 and 6? You have a lot in common, like it's 4 of you, but please connect later. That's quite significant, right? Not many. Some people would click on the numbers, right? Anything else? A scroll. Anybody would scroll? Anybody would do something else? Close the site. Okay, that's one option, one way of dealing with the navigation, right? I have to admit at this point that you all were wrong, right? All of you, I don't try to be difficult, but you can do whatever you want here. It's not quite how it works. So I hope it's a video. Is it playing? I hope it should be playing in a moment. Hold on. If it plays, yes, whew, I got lucky today. So, not quite. You can click as much as you like, you can drag as much as you like, you can click on the numbers as much as you like. It doesn't do anything. Because if you want to control this carousel and move to the next slide, of course, you swipe, right? That's what it is. How didn't you think about that? That's just, it's right there. It's right in front of you. Whenever you have a mismatch between the position or the orientation of the slider against what actually is going to happen, it's going to cause confusion. Now you might think, well, this is one website that does that. All right. Well, this is the Van Gogh Museum from the Netherlands doing the same thing at the bottom. Scroll for more. Well, many people will try to slide kind of horizontally, but no. You just scroll down in order to access this content on the page. That's very confusing. Right? One thing you can do to improve your carousels is to replace these dots that people try to click on with something like a slider like this. Right? So that still indicates or shows that something has changed, I think. Oh, this is actually very timely, because these are some of the UX mistakes that you might want to avoid, right? That's okay, that's okay. But you can do this, right? Where you basically say, well, if you want to indicate progress, you can actually do it this way. That's the simplest way that people understand. If you have auto-rotating carousel or auto-advancing carousel, the one thing you need to do is to add the pause button. Not only because it's important for accessibility, but because if you do not, and it auto-advances too quickly usually means faster than 5 seconds, then people just ignore it altogether. They just scroll past it and just ignore it altogether, right? Sometimes it's a good idea to actually replace these dots with something other than dots, like labels that you see at the bottom. At least they provide you with some context about what you're looking at, right? That's quite helpful. And another thing you can do is also to make it a bit more interactive. Like, for example, here, back, right? Like, for example, here, one more time, right? We have these labels, and you have these hover effects on those labels. So you can give people some preview of what is expecting them, right? This video previews, things like that. At least it's a bit more contextual. So you will encourage more people to actually go through the different slides of the carousel, right? And then as you keep going, right, this is what it looks like on mobile. You can also do this, for example, where you can replace these dots with thumbnails. You can also replace them with icons. You can replace them with something that gives people some context. The question, however, is on mobile, where, these are the questions that keep me, awake at night. When you think about navigating that carousel, the arrows, where should they go? Now, should these arrows be grouped like they are on the right and on the left? Should they be distributed like this horizontally, right? And if they are grouped, right, then where should they be grouped? Under the slide of the carousel here, or above the carousel over here? Let's have a vote. We have a democracy here, right? Let's have a vote. Who thinks that this is the best choice? Oh, hold on. What does best mean at all? Well, we want to encourage people to go through as many slides of the carousel as possible, right? So who would say this one? Okay, I would say 15%, okay? Who would say this one? More, I would say 45%, okay? Who would think this one? Okay, maybe also 15%. Now, first of all, let's start with the one that works worst. That's, of course, this one. Why does it perform so poorly? Well, because we always make it difficult for people to advance. Why? Because people are very bad at hitting targets. I mean, very, very bad at hitting targets. So have you been in a situation where you maybe click here, but you end up clicking on the image and you go inside? Yes, maybe. Well, people often do that, and then they have to recover by returning back, right, and trying to navigate again, right? That's just slow and unnecessary. So whenever you kind of break them apart like this, you might think, well, that's easier for people to move forward, it's easier for people to go back. But if you think about TV control, or remote control that you have at home, right? The buttons back and forward, they're not like, it's not like the back button is over here, and the next button is over here, right? This is not how it works, because usually it goes back and forth. So you kind of have this notion of moving back and forth quite a lot. So in general, grouping is always a good idea. This, not so much, because people always have to refocus their attention, refocus their pointer or finger to the right place. Doesn't perform too good. This one is second worst. Why is that? Well, or second best. It depends if you see half glass half full or not, right? Second best is nicer, right? This is a problem because whenever you interact with these buttons, right, you always, I mean, this is a very big phone. I don't have that much of a, this is a big mobile phone. Usually it looks like this, just for reference, right? So whenever you have the arrows on the top, right, you will always at least partly covering the content within the carousel by your fingers. Because most of the time, your fingers are not going to be transparent, I assume, right? So that means that whenever you have to navigate, right, or whenever you're navigating, you have to lift your fingers, and then you consume the content, and then you keep navigating. That's just slower. Of all of them, this one performs best, right? So if you have a choice, you could do this. This is probably going to work better. And there are many interfaces trying to do this, like grouping of the icons is actually quite important. This would be my reference example for any kind of carousel. On desktop, you have these arrows grouped, and they are on the top, right? And please close it, thank you. You have this on the top. But as you go to a smaller screen, as you will see in just a moment, these arrows, they kind of jump under this carousel right here. Just need to go a little bit more. And this is where they are. They are grouped. They are under the carousel. Oh, come on, damn it. Just keep going already, right? And so eventually you get this, where they're grouped, you have the labels, you have these buttons together, they're quite large, right? They are under the carousel, and on desktop they are above the carousel. That seems to be performing best, right? And again, there are a few options, or again, a few examples of this in action. But this is a quick summary of the carousels bit, right? So whenever you think about the carousels, you will see a lot of people navigating them if it matters to them. It might not, if it's like a product page where people want to buy a t-shirt, they will go through all the slides of the carousel. When it comes to something like a hotel experience, people are booking a vacation, they will go through all the slides of the carousel. The only thing that we need to do is not disrupt them by doing so, and avoid mistakes that usually happen on mobile when the arrows are in the wrong places. Okay, this one or the other one? Hold on, let me do the other one. I'm just going to do the thing, because usually I like to have control over my machine. But let me just plug it in. Can I jump? To find the right slide, that's usually fun. Okay. This one. Because I promised, can I make it full screen? Because I promised infinite scroll, so I better do infinite scroll. Oh, 7 mistakes that UI UX people do. Excellent. Okay, so infinite scroll is another thing. I was tasked with a little project. This is like going to take me 5 more minutes. Little project, improve infinite scroll. Anybody again likes infinite scroll? Yeah, what's not to like? It has all the accessibility issues you might have. First of all, you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll, and you scroll. That's a scroll bar. Eventually it's done, right? It might take a while. So you scroll, you scroll, you scroll, you scroll, and you're done. What's the big deal? Well, the problem is, these are all the issues that you might encounter, but who cares, right? We like infinite scroll. Infinite scroll is great. So it's overwhelmingly difficult to manage, but let them manage. That's not the problem. High abandonment rates, not our problem anyway, right? It's very difficult to spot what the new segment is in the new and the old parts. The URL in the address bar is always lying to you, but let it lie, right? You can't bookmark a location, but why would you want to return to a location anyway? You can never reach the footer, but who needs the footer anyway, right? It breaks the scroll bar, has a lot of accessibility issues and performance issues. So if we try to improve infinite scroll, what would we do? Well, first of all, one common thing that you will find in those kind of implementations of infinite scroll is that eventually, if you look at the right, this scroll bar, right, eventually it jumps. That's why scroll bar is lying to you. But then, of course, as you keep going and going and going, eventually what you often find in interfaces is the load more button. Right? It actually has a very good reason, because very often when people encounter a particular number of items, they just stopped. They're just not interested anymore. So we probably want to try to twist it a little bit or improve it a little bit. We could, of course, also use pagination, but pagination is often considered to be slow because you have to go through a lot of pages, right? So what can we do then? There are different ways of how to design. Ooh, wow. That was quite an interesting pattern there. So pagination is often the most reliable one, but it's also the most popular one as well, but also the most slowest solution that you can have. People spend a lot of time on the first page, use filters and sorting more, but they don't see more items necessarily. That's kind of an issue that you always have with pagination. The load more button works best, it works well. Users browse more, and they also focus on single items, often scrolling up and down. But one thing you can really improve with this load more is to make it a bit more interesting or useful. Like, for example, here you could say, hey, let's just try to fix all these issues. Why don't we give people a way to send a link to themselves to continue where they left off last time? So send a link to continue later, plus you could win a $350 gift card, right? It could look different, maybe like this, that would be nicer. So as somebody has reached a particular threshold, you can say, hey, you can continue here later. They click on it, it gets green, and you can, whenever you come back to this page later, it will tell you, hey, would you like to continue where you left off last time? And if there are any items that have been loaded in dynamically, you probably want to display them under this button rather than somewhere on the top. Right, that's a bit better. At least people get an understanding about where they are in the position on the list. It could also be a pop-up like this. It could also be just a link. Copy a link to this position in this list. That could be helpful, right? But then we can actually make it a little bit better even with infinite scroll, right? Because here with infinite scroll, people scroll a lot. There is a lack of control, footer issues, and all these things, right? So how can we do that? Well, first of all, footer is not a problem anymore because, if you have a weekend where you go through Malaysian food delivery service websites, which I highly recommend to you as well, it's a great thing for Friday night too, right? What you will find is that they have a sticky footer. You need a footer? You open a footer. The problem solved that we had with Infinite Scroll as well. That's done, right? And then you come to this place because you could actually combine pagination, Infinite Scroll, and lot more together. Like all of them together. Now this is how it works at Peppa.pl, which is the Polish retailer. So as you keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, if you pay attention to the URL on the top, it changes. So you actually go through the infinite scroll list, but then at every point, what you get is access to every individual part of the page, be it the footer, be it the header, or the pagination. So it's kind of pagination meeting infinite scroll in one, right? And of course, one thing that they also have is the ability to jump to a particular page. But I always ask myself, what needs to happen with a person so they wake up one day and think, today I'm going to go to page number 13. Like, this is the day. I've been waiting for this day for such a long time. Today, I'm going to go for page 13. Now, this doesn't happen. So how can we make pagination, in that case, also more useful? Well, one thing you could do, of course, is, I can skip it. One thing you can do, of course, is say, well, even if you have incredible filtering, incredible search, and all of that, it's still not going to work too well because you just have a lot of products to go through, right? Like they do in IKEA. Incredible, beautiful, everything looks great, but, it's just a lot of stuff in here. So one thing you can do, though, is say, why don't we provide more context for people what they're sorting by? So if they're filtering and they're sorting, we can surface that information right here next to scroll bar. So even if it's infinite scroll, they can now know that they're going to jump straight to $210 if they want to. And it doesn't have to be price alone. It could be anything, whatever people are sorting by. The quality of reviews, you can think about 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, right? Those kind of things could be very helpful too. Right? And you can also do this for pagination. So now if you do want to go to page number 13, right, at least you know what kind of price range to expect there, or what kind of range in general to expect there, right? But then, of course, you can still do one more thing, which is magical. Remember the bookmarking allocation part? Well, why don't we allow people to just bookmark in that infinite list that they have, locations which they find relevant for them, with products that they find interesting, right? So they can bookmark multiple locations and then return back to them if they want to on the same page or on the same list, right? That's actually quite powerful. So these are those things that are called scroll bar range intervals, right? So these are the things that you probably want to keep in mind. If in doubt, it's always better to use pagination if you can. With infinite scroll, you can always bring people to be exposed to more items, which is a good idea. You can combine infinite scroll and load more and pagination into one as well. And in general, if you can provide some sort of hints of what people should be expecting, right, when they actually scroll or when they go to the pagination, this is going to be only helpful, right? I mean, we could go like this forever because I have like 3,000 slides more, I think. It's not actually a joke. It's serious. We have like 3,000 slides more. But I hope that this is useful so far, and I hope that you will be able to apply those things to your work as well. Most importantly, before we start designing, think about things that are actually pain points, and then thinking about ways of how to solve them and address them directly. This is going to be much more significant and helpful than any traditional, I would say, design process. This is mine. Thank you so much for being here, for staying here. Hope it was useful.